The rain came down hard that night in Copper Creek, slapping against the tin roof of the only diner still open past 9. Lightning flashed across the plains, and thunder rolled over the small town like the voice of God himself, angry at the world. Inside, a single lantern flickered above the counter where a young woman stood, wiping her trembling hands on her apron. Her name was Ella Mae Collins, the shy cook everyone in town forgot about until they needed coffee or pie. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about her cornbread or the pot of beans simmering on the stove. She was staring at the door, waiting, hoping. Then it opened. A man stepped through, tall as a doorframe and twice as worn. His hat dripped with rain, and his boots left muddy prints on the wooden floor. His coat hung heavy on his shoulders, and the look in his eyes, Lord. That look was colder than the storm outside. Evening, Ella Mae whispered, a voice barely carrying over the wind. The stranger looked up, his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. Coffee, he muttered, his tone deep, rough, like a man who hadn't spoken to another soul in a long while. She poured him a cup, her hands shaking. When she slid it across the counter, their fingers brushed and she flinched. His touch was calloused but warm, a quiet reminder that he was still human, despite whatever had hollowed him out inside. Name's Luke Callahan, he said after a long silence, still staring into his cup. Used to have a ranch north of here. Used to. The words hung heavy in the air. Ella Mae knew who he was then. Everyone did. The rancher whose bride ran off with his best friend 2 years ago. Folks said Luke hadn't smiled since that day, hadn't cared for nothing or no one. Storm's bad, she said softly. You can wait it out here if you'd like. He gave a short nod, then looked out the window where the rain blurred the lights of the town. Minutes passed. Neither spoke, but in the quiet clink of his spoon and the soft hum of the stove, something unspoken stirred, something even Ella Mae didn't understand. Outside, thunder cracked again, loud enough to shake the windows. She jumped, nearly spilling a pot of stew. He caught it before it fell, steadying her hands with his. Easy there, he murmured. His voice was gentle, and for a moment she forgot about the storm. When she finally found her courage, she asked, You ever go to the town dances? Mr. Callahan, he huffed. Ain't danced in years? She hesitated, twisting the rag in her hands. There's one tonight, down at the old barn. I know, he said, still staring out the window. Saw the lanterns, her throat tightened. My ex will be there, with his new sweetheart. Luke said nothing. I thought I'd be fine, she went on, forcing a laugh that cracked in the middle. But now I can't stand the thought of walking in alone. Everyone'll be looking, whispering. You know how small towns are. He finally turned to face her, his eyes soft but unreadable. So what are you asking, Miss Collins? She looked down at her hands, voice trembling. Could you pretend to be my boyfriend? Just for one night. The diner went quiet, except for the patter of rain and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. He didn't speak for what felt like forever. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Then Luke set down his cup and said, You want to lie that bad? Her cheeks flushed. I just want to feel like I matter, even if it's make-believe. He studied her, this shy little cook with flour on her cheek and a heart too big for a world so small. Finally he stood, pulling his hat low. One night, he said. That's all. She smiled, a nervous, grateful smile, and nodded. When they stepped into the rain, the whole world seemed to watch them go. The storm had slowed to a drizzle, the moon breaking through clouds like it wanted to see what would happen next. By the time they reached the barn, the dance was already in full swing. Fiddles played, boots stomped, and laughter filled the air. But when Luke Callahan walked in with Ella Mae on his arm, the music seemed to stumble for a second. Every head turned. The shy cook no one noticed now walked beside the most broken man in Copper Creek. Let 'em look, Luke whispered, his arms steady around her shoulders. Her ex, Billy Tanner, stood near the punch table with his new girl, a loud, painted thing with too much perfume and not enough kindness. His smirk faltered when he saw them. Luke nodded at the band, and the fiddler struck a slower tune. He turned to Ella Mae. "I reckon I don't dance much anymore," he said quietly. She looked up at him, shy but bold all at once. "Then let me lead." The corners of his mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile he'd shown in years. They stepped onto the floor. His hands found hers, rough but careful, guiding her through the rhythm. Her heart raced so fast, she thought everyone could hear it. Around them, whispers filled the air. The heartbroken rancher. The cook who never talked, but to them the world had gone silent. The song ended too soon, and when it did, Luke leaned down just enough to whisper, "You did fine, Ella." She looked up at him, eyes shimmering in the lantern light. "So did you, Luke." Billy Tanner's jaw clenched. He tried to approach her after that, but Luke's glare stopped him cold. The man turned back, humiliated, and the crowd pretended not to notice. Ella Mae finally exhaled. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. When the night ended, Luke offered her his arm again. They walked out under a sky full of stars and the smell of wet earth. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She frowned. "Do what?" "Make yourself a fool for him." Her voice was soft, steady now. "I wasn't doing it for him, Luke. I was doing it for me. Maybe for you too." He stopped walking. "For me." "You looked like a man who forgot what kindness feels like." He looked down, quiet for a long moment, then said, "Maybe I did." They walked the rest of the way to her diner in silence, but it wasn't the uneasy kind. It was the kind that feels like peace. When they reached the porch, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said. He tipped his hat. "Wasn't nothing." "Maybe to you," she said, smiling softly. "But to me it was everything." He looked at her one last time before mounting his horse. "You're braver than you think, Miss Collins." She blushed, lowering her gaze. "And you're kinder than you let on, Mr. Callahan." He rode off, the sound of his horse fading into the night. She stood there long after he was gone, the rain starting again, softer this time, like the sky itself was sighing in relief. Days passed, then weeks. Folks in Copper Creek talked about that night, about how Luke Callahan danced again, how Ella Mae Collins walked taller. But no one knew what happened one quiet morning when Luke came riding back into town. He stopped outside the diner, dismounted, and walked in just as he had that stormy night. Only this time there was no rain, no thunder, just the golden light of morning and the smell of fresh biscuits. Ella looked up from behind the counter, startled but smiling. "Back already?" He took off his hat. "I was riding north, but couldn't shake a thought loose." "Oh?" He nodded. "You said one night, remember?" Her cheeks flushed. "I did." He stepped closer, eyes steady on hers. "Well, I was wondering if maybe we could stretch that night into something longer." For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she laughed, soft, shy, the kind of sound that makes the morning brighter. "I'd like that, Luke." He smiled then, a real one this time. "Guess I'll take my coffee black again. Guess I'll pour it for you," she said, her heart racing. Outside, the wind rustled the sign above the door, and the world felt new again. In a town that had forgotten how to hope, two broken souls had found it in each other. Sometimes love doesn't come with roses or promises. Sometimes it comes with rain, a cup of coffee, and a shy question whispered through the storm. "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for one night?" But that one night changed everything, because what started as pretend ended up being the most real thing either of them had ever known.